This is the new Chery Tiggo 8 Pro Max. Not sure how many words they can get into that name, but it's basically an affordable, or one of the most affordable 7-seater SUVs you can get in Australia right now. Sorry about the wind today. It's put a lot of sticks and stuff all over the road. We'll jump into the car as soon as we can to get out of the wind. There are 3 versions on sale in Australia: the Urban, the Elite, and the Ultimate, which is what this is. The top of the range. Prices start from $41,990 drive away, which makes it, one of the cheapest 7-seat SUVs you can get in Australia right now. This example is $47,990 drive away, which is starting to get up there, but if you compare it to its nearest rivals, according to Vbox, this goes up against the likes of the Toyota Kluger, Mazda CX-9, and all of the rugged ladder frame style 7-seater SUVs. And against those, $47,990 is definitely very competitive. Just quickly touching on the design, and we'll jump inside. I think it looks really good. It's a little bit 2015, but I do like the way that it's very consistent. It's got refined corners and panel contours and so on. The grille and everything all looks very well integrated. It just doesn't look cutting edge modern. Far out. I think one of these trees is going to come down in a minute. The headlights and the tail lights look very modern and crisp. But yeah, like the plastic molding around the wheel arches and the fact that it doesn't look super futuristic is just, it's not as modern as some rivals, or some of the latest rivals anyway. At the back, it's got the full width tail light, which is a current fashion at the moment. And then this example's got quad outlet exhausts for some reason. I mean, it does look sporty, and they are connected up. It is actually a quad, it was twin exhaust, and it splits into 2 mufflers with 4 outlets on each muffler. This has got what I would call showroom appeal. So excellent price tag, looks good on the outside, and the features stack up really well too. So we'll jump inside, get out of this wind before we get crushed by a tree. This example's got the brown leather interior, which makes it look pretty classy, with Range Rover style pillow headrests. And then once you're inside, you'll see that it does carry through the same sort of appeal. It looks good. I like this wood style trimming. I don't know if it is real wood, but it doesn't really matter as long as it looks and feels good, and it does. And it pairs nicely with the brown trim with exposed stitching. This touch panel down here is for the climate control. It gives you some options, which is good. I like it when they have separated controls from the touchscreen. Very nice, sharp touchscreen as well. But yeah, you've got aircon and so on to just have quick access, adjust the temperature too. Fully digital instrument cluster as well. I think the graphics are really good. When you go into the vehicle settings, some things are spread a little bit confusingly. So you've got in-car control, in-car option for the driver monitoring camera. That's just here. So you can turn that off if you want to. And then for the rest of the controls, or the annoying controls of what I call them, is in this smart driving panel. That's where you've got all of your lane keep assist and all that sort of stuff. Cabin space is pretty good. I mean, it's not as big as a Toyota Kluger in my opinion. It's just a little bit narrower, but it does feel just as long. And you do have this big chunky center console with, big storage box in the middle, wireless charging and cup holders. In the middle row, you've got excellent legroom, adjustable or sliding middle row too. But oddly, you can't recline the seat. I mean, it is pretty reclined as it is in the default position, but you've got this lever up the top here, and that pivots the whole thing forward. As I said though, you can roll the middle row forward. You've got cup holders and an armrest in the middle, climate vents and multiple charging ports. Then up at the back, we've got a decent sized boot and little seats in the 3rd row. They don't offer the most room for this class, but they're okay if you've just got kids or something like that. They do have climate controls there too. Access into the seats isn't very good either. That sort of pivots forward, but then the headrest smashes into the front seat. So you've got to kind of climb over through a narrow gap. Yeah, that's not the best access through there at all. And the room is very minimal. Like my knees would be smashed up against that. You'd have to roll the seat forward quite a bit. And as you can see, my head is almost touching the ceiling, and I'm not very tall. I think these are best for kids only, really. Yeah, we'll go for a drive now because I feel like I'm going to get crushed by a tree. Before we get going, I'm going to leave the driver monitoring camera on, but I've turned off the lane keep assist as you can see, there's quite a lot of sticks and so on. I'll try and dodge the bigger ones, but at the same time give you a bit of an impression on how it drives. The first thing I notice is the suspension is just too soft, and some of these new brands like Chery and some of the other ones, they just seem to go with a very soft setting. And I've seen comments of, you know, saying that in China they like soft suspension. Well, guess what? This is Australia. It'll be like Australians going over to China to try to sell meat pies with sauce. If the market doesn't like it, you know, it's not the market's fault. It's the person selling the product. And that's the same with this. I think this suspension setup is just too soft for our conditions. We've got lots of country roads, dirt roads in Australia, and then very poor city roads with lots of patchwork and road connections and so on. Like down roads like this, if I was a passenger, I'd start to feel a bit seasick. And I'm not driving fast, I'm just driving at a very conservative pace. If you want to try and drive a bit faster, then it gets much worse, which I'll try and demonstrate that for you in a minute. On the flip side though, the ride is very comfortable. It absorbs bumps almost too easily. I think the spring setting is just too relaxed. So the purpose of a spring is to push the wheel back down onto the ground, or more accurately, decompress the shock absorber. So if you've got a soft spring, what happens is the spring doesn't get a chance to push the wheel back down onto the ground or the shock absorber back out, and then you hit another bump and it's too late. It's like it skips over the bumps. It doesn't get a chance to remain firmly planted. And what that means is less grip. If the car is, or if the tire is skipping over the road and pretty much catching some air momentarily, that's not a good thing. But also it means that it's sloppy around corners. You know, there's a bit of torque steer actually, even though this is meant to be four-wheel drive. The top model is four-wheel drive, the rest of them, the entry two, are front-wheel drive. This feels like a front-wheel drive most of the time. As you'll see in the upcoming performance test, it kind of spins the front wheel for a second while it engages the rear axle, or before it engages the rear axle. It's a bit delayed. But yeah, pushing around these corners, the front starts to feel a bit weird and the steering goes light. And I don't have complete confidence in what the tyres are going to do next. Obviously this is not a sports car, but I am comparing it to other vehicles in the same class. So if you take a Toyota Kluger or whatever, Mazda CX-9 down here, it'll handle really well. It's very well balanced. It's not a sports car either, but it just seems to handle itself, and it's more composed, certainly. Under the bonnet we've got a 2-litre turbo-petrol 4-cylinder, 180 kilowatts, which is good. It goes quite well. Just floor it. A bit of a delay with the transmission, but you do have a sport mode, and there's a little notification for that.
Normal mode entered. Sports mode entered. Snow mode entered.
You've got some other off-road mode.
Entered.
You've got some other off-road modes as well. In sport mode it is more responsive. I'll just slow down and show you the kick down again. That picks up much quicker than in normal mode. In terms of fuel economy, we've covered around 508 kilometers over the week of testing, and it's averaging 10 litres per 100, which is not the best in this class. And no, I haven't been just driving around in sport mode thrashing it about. We've been driving on the highway quite a bit and just, yeah, using it like a normal SUV. Because of that soft suspension, it kind of discourages you from driving, you know, in sporty conditions like this. It's just more of a comfortable cruiser. I think it does well with that. Some big sticks. I think it does well for that purpose, but overall I don't think this is the right setup for this style of vehicle. I think the suspension just needs to be tied down a little bit more. I'm surprised the driver monitoring camera hasn't gone off at me yet, because it does normally, but it does have just a quiet chime. It's not really intrusive, and you know, big warnings. You have been distracted for a long time. Like, I got in this vehicle this morning and it straight away said you have been distracted for a long time after driving for about a minute. How can I be distracted for a long time if I've only just got in the car? But like any vehicle with these cameras, I mean, sorry, it's not the vehicle's fault necessarily. I think the tuning and calibration, there's more work to be done with some compared with others, and I think this needs some more tuning. But the camera itself, the whole idea behind that is It's just silly. I think the guys and girls at ANCAP are being a bit lazy by making it mandatory for manufacturers to have these. It's basically a tick box. If you've got it, that's it, you pass. Which I don't think that's right. I think the purpose of ANCAP should be to make safer cars. And I don't think that actually makes this vehicle or any vehicle any safer, because you have been distracted for a long time. What does that do? That doesn't do anything. ABS brakes, it stops you locking up and allows you to maintain steering. The airbag, it goes off in your face and catches your head, stopping it from smashing into the steering column. There's all these controls that actually do stuff, whereas that camera, I don't understand what it actually does. If I'm tired and falling asleep, are you going to save me? No, you're not. You're just going to say you've been distracted for a long time or some other stupid message. That's not effective, in my opinion. Anyway, little rant aside, if you're after a cheap 7-seater SUV, I would go with something like a Mitsubishi Outlander, similar price to this, better practicality, even though it might not be as long. I think even the access to the third row is better than this, and it might not come with the big touchscreens, and it might not come with the very nice looking interior. Overall, you're getting a better vehicle, in my opinion. That also comes with a 10-year warranty. This has got 7 years. But you know, if you want something a little bit different, I think this does look good. It's got plenty of features, as I said, and it goes okay, but the fuel consumption is a bit high comparatively, and there's just some tuning and calibration issues. Like even the way the dashboard meets up here, I'll just stop for a second. The dashboard meets here, and there's kind of this weird little gap, and it's not really aligned. It feels like that should be just one smooth join through there, but it's just, yeah, little bits and pieces like that kind of annoy me a little bit. But again, you're paying a cheap price, so if you go for the base model, $41,990 drive away, you know, you're getting a lot of vehicle for the money. All right, let's head out now to the private road and see what it goes like.